Okay, hi guys and welcome to the show, and today we are doing another watch duel, and this time we are comparing a watch from the legendary Universal Genève, which I purchased for an absolute bargain. It's the Caliber 42, so in the red corner, the Caliber 42, beautiful little 60s dress watch, manual wind. So we'll get back to that in just a moment. And in the blue corner we have probably one of the most infamous fashion watches. Sorry about the smudges. And by the way guys, you'll notice it hasn't got the case back. I have removed the case back, which is over here, so we can take a look at the movement. I haven't removed the case back of the Universal Genève, as I've just had it serviced and I don't want to get any risk any dust or any particles getting in there. So this is the Movement Classic, I believe, which is an extremely popular fashion watch. It's been lent in by my good friend Joe, so thank you very much. Now, before I get into this duel, I should quickly do a wristwatch check, and I'm wearing my Zin 104. Which I had lent to my good friend Vito. If you're not familiar with Vito, he runs the Urban Gentry Instagram. Let's get a nice close-up. Come on, focus. There we go. Look at that. Look at that. It's not until you get some time away that you really appreciate just how amazing this watch is. Sorry about all the smudges. And I've got it on my lucky Zulu strap, of course. Now, if you're not familiar with this segment or this style of video, there are 10 categories with a total at the end. I mark each category out of 10. It's pretty much self-explanatory. Style is the only one not to get confused with design. Design is more how it's designed to serve a purpose. Style is more aesthetics. So that's pretty much it. It's all self-explanatory, and as we move down through the categories, I will move this London tube map. I use it because it's just perfect for the size, and also it's horology related with that beautiful gilt clock illustration, and the way they've combined the tube tunnel where the pendulum swings is just absolute pure class. Anyway, so let's start right at the beginning with value. So let's move that down. Immediately you'll see the Universal Genève takes the lead with an extremely strong 9. Now, why is that? Well, Universal Genève, without a doubt, is a very prestigious historic brand with an incredible legacy of innovation and watchmaking to their name. The fact that I was able to pick this up for under $200, not that much more than the retail cost of the Movement over here, is just astonishing. A kind of weak spot in the used market. And yes, it's a smaller watch. We'll get into that in just a moment. I would almost give it a 10. I think actually this watch will increase in value over time, as I do feel Universal Genève is one of those watch brands that is going to increase in value, especially in the vintage market. The Movement, however, I only gave a 3. And considering their complete lack of heritage, the fact that it's a Chinese-made, mass-produced fashion watch, there is hardly any resale value in it whatsoever. I think a 3 is generous. The only reason I gave it any points at all is because for its price, you do get a functional watch, which is more to do with its performance. We will get into that in just a moment. So let's move on down to design. Again, the Universal Genève takes the edge. I gave it a really strong 8. It's not a perfect design. There are some things that I don't like about it. For example, its 17mm lug width is a little bit annoying. I don't know why they couldn't have gone with 16 or 18. You know, finding straps for odd numbers, sorry, is a bit of an annoyance. The Universal Genève is only 23 grams in comparison to the Movement Classics 57 grams, but I think because of their relative scale, that's understandable. So without a doubt, the Universal Genève is far more comfortable, and you hardly notice you've got it on. It slides under the cuff beautifully, so it really is designed for its purpose. Its design as a two-hander is phenomenal. What you get the beautiful, if I go in real close, you can see, and as I angle it, this astonishing kind of linen dial that just has a texture that as you move it in the light, it's phenomenal. Also, we do get blued hands. There's quite a nice amount of refinement. Now, it is gold plated, which is a little bit of a letdown, although gold plating back in the 60s was a little thicker than how they do it these days. It's not as bad as you think. Normally, I don't go for gold plated watches. The dimensions are incredible. It's a 33mm watch, but its thickness is just a smidgen over 5mm, which is astounding. This comes from the age where companies, or watch brands rather, watchmakers, were competing. It was a sign of refinement in watchmaking to make as thinner movements as possible, and considering this is an in-house mechanical movement is staggering. So I really do feel the design, it's a timeless design and serves its purpose as a dress watch perfectly. The lack of seconds, while it's not everybody's cup of tea, certainly a mid-century style, this is all about less is more. I think if anything, its smaller stature almost assists its appeal. In doing so, it's not using size to make up for anything, which I feel the movement is. This kind of naive thinking that bigger is better. Without a shadow of doubt, it's a perfect dress watch. It really is. It's small, unassuming, smart, classic, refined, yet not too flashy, but at the same time it has a little dash of vibrance or vividness with that dial. It's wonderful. The movement, on the other hand, I think its design is a little bit bizarre. First of all, it's 45mm and 10mm thick. It's far too big. And there's no need for it to be this big. If we look at the movement on the back, look at all this extra spacing. It's just a classic snapback, the same as the Universal Genève, but just look at how much more stylishly done that is. Look at those lugs. Look at that shape. Look at the way the lugs attach and this raised section there. It's very endearing, and I think its design has been thought out more carefully. This is fairly bog standard. You do get some nice little touches like a signed etched crown there. Crown very much is undersized. It's difficult to manipulate. But what I really don't understand is why it's so big. You do get applied markers. Look at the buckle, it's a little bit too tool-tastic for something that's trying to be a dress watch. And then this strap, it's so thick and big, oversized, it's clumsy. I feel the design is going to date very quickly. I guess that's more into style, so we'll get on to that in just a moment. In terms of serving a purpose, it's not very legible. As you can see at certain angles, that it just, all you can see is the second hand. It's so funny that a massive watch like this is more difficult to read than this petite, tiny little mid-century piece. It's almost amusing. So yeah, the design only gets 4. It's a bit of a disappointment. A little bit of Bauhaus, a little bit of, dare I say, Flieger with the scale and the strap. Bunged it together with a cheap quartz. It's not very refined, to say the least. Anyway, let's move on to a really interesting segment, movement. Now, obviously, the Universal Genève steams ahead with its in-house caliber 42. This has a power reserve of 43 hours. The accuracy is not that great, but it does operate at 21,600 vibrations an hour. It's a 17 joule movement. Universal Genève are famous for making all of their movements in-house, and it's amazing to think that you can get something Swiss for as little as this. So I had to give it an 8. The only reason I don't give it more is because its accuracy, it is a little bit of a delicate movement, to say the least, and that's what you'd expect with something so thin. The lack of seconds, not everyone's going to like that. Personally, I like it in a dress watch. I think it goes with that kind of gala watch style. You're not really even supposed to wear a watch with white tie or black tie, but I feel something as understated and classy as this, it works, you know. Anyway, sorry, that's a totally different point, but let's move on to the movement. Now, as I said earlier, I've removed the case back. Inside the movement, we have the Japanese Miyota 2415. It has a battery life of 3 years. Its accuracy is actually pretty good. We're looking at about plus 20 seconds a month. It's also quite robust. It can take a licking. all in all, it's not a bad movement. Now, if we pull out the crown, we do get hacking. We also get a quick set date. Sorry, it's a bit tricky to do with gloves on. So that's pretty good. So why did I give it a 2? Well, first of all, it's one of the most affordable quartz movements out there. I did a little bit of research, and you can buy these movements for as little as $11. So the rest you're paying, even at this price, for branding and the rest of the components, which is all made in China. The movement, you don't get any of the magic of watchmaking. While it performs admirably, and we'll discuss that later, it's not something you could ever be proud of. I mean, just in comparison to this in-house Swiss-made gem here with the Universal Genève, being in manual wind, there is that interactive element to the watch. I've described manual wind movements before as kind of mechanical Tamagotchi. So you have an intimate relationship with the watch. The movement, I don't feel the same. It feels cold. None of that romance. There is none of that charm. Obviously, it's not going to score highly. So let's move on to brand and prestige. Now, Movement scores abysmally here. Movement don't really have any history of prestige to their name. They were started in 2013, and they describe themselves, and I'm quoting here, as college dropouts with the dream of shaking up the watch industry. Watch and fashion industry. I'm sorry, I misquoted there. Interesting. I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions of that. But yeah, the co-founders are Jake Cassan and Kramer LaPlante, and they certainly did shake up the industry. Probably not by bringing any kind of horological innovation, but yet certainly innovative in the use of social media marketing. So, you know, you got to respect them for that. However, there's no horology here. And on the other hand, we have Universal Genève, which is a really impressive brand. They were founded in 1894, so a long time ago, in Lochiol, Neuchâtel, Switzerland. They have an incredible history. I mean, we could spend an hour just going through some of their achievements. Since their beginnings, the company has produced complete watches, all in-house movements, still to this day, and they have many notable and important timepieces. They are internationally regarded for their style of craftsmanship and manufacture. As well as that, they make the historical claim for creating the first chronographic wristwatch in 1917. In the 30s and 50s, they really were known for their chronographs, especially World War II chronographs, in particular the Universal Genève tri-compact chronographs. Very complicated, with a lot of complications, as you would imagine, and quite a staggering achievement for that time. In World War II, soldiers would use the stopwatch device in the chronographs during training exercise or even full-fledged combat operations. They even briefly collaborated with Parisian high-fashion brand Hermès. These were fabulously complicated chronographs with telemeters and tachymeters and all the rest of it. They did many collaborations with jewelry firms such as Tiffany's and also other companies like Cartier and Movado. In the 50s and 60s, probably their most iconic design is the pole router, designed by Gerald Genta, of course. Hugely iconic, and when you say Universal Genève, this is probably the first watch you think of. It was designed for durability under extreme temperatures and fluctuating altitudes. Universal Genève then went through a bit of a bad patch in the 70s and 80s, as most of the traditional Swiss watchmaking industry did with the quartz crisis, and at this time they did make some very cool pieces as well. So the watch we're looking at today is from pretty much the end period of their peak in the 60s before the 70s came in. So it's really cool that it's part of that history. In the 90s, they had a comeback and became quite sought after by enthusiasts. Now, they had many notable wearers and celebrities, writers, business executives, diplomats wearing their watches. One famous limited edition they made for the driver Ayrton Senna, Argentine President Juan Perón. Who else? President Harry Truman wore one. President Donald Trump even had one. Even the musician Eric Clapton had a Panda Dial Tri-Compax during mid to late 60s. That actually led to that particular model being nicknamed the Eric Clapton. One of the most notorious and infamous stories of Universal Genève ownership has to be Hermann Göring's watch, which apparently legend has it that the Reich Marshal Göring actually used the watch as a bribe to gain access to his cyanide pills, which he of course ingested to escape the hangman's noose. So incredible. And actually there are pictures of it floating around with his signature on the back. Amazing stories, amazing legacy, and not to forget the Rattrapante that they did, or Rattrapante if you want to say it correctly, which was sold off recently, I think at both Sotheby's and Christie's, various versions. This was designed for the Royal Italian Air Force and was just a really massive watch, but beautiful. And I talked about it and featured it in a video a couple of weeks back. Amazing watch. So it's no surprise that the Universal Genève is highly collectible, highly sought after, very well regarded. I think it gets a 9. It really does. I mean, I'd almost give it a 10, but it's not quite horology, you know, super high-end just yet. But all the same, it's a history that many brands would die for. What more can I say? We're definitely going to revisit Universal Genève in the future. So let's move on to quality. Again, well, it's getting rather predictable, but, you know, stay tuned because it's going to get interesting towards the end. Universal Genève gets an 8. They've added refinements like this incredible dial. It's not easy to manufacture. I'm still trying to find out if this was done by hand or if it was a machine. The blued hands, they have to heat treat them to a specific temperature. It's not a cheap or easy thing to do. It requires skill and obviously more labor. Look at those little batons. Just the placement of them is utterly perfect. The quality is astounding considering, yeah, this is from the 60s. The movement, on the other hand, still gets a respectable 3. I gotta say, the brushing of the case is well done. We do have an entirely brushed case with, I think, an exception on this edge here of the case back. Other than that, it's all entirely brushed. The etching is done very well, I must say. None of the applied hour markers are misplaced. Everything is where they should be. It's the choice of materials. Obviously, this being a 60s piece, we have a plastic crystal there. On the movement we have mineral. I don't expect sapphire glass at this price range. I think corners have been cut with the strap. I feel the strap is rather cheap feeling. Just remove the spacer here. You can see it's just glued in. Just look at that space. I mean, you could actually smuggle diamonds using this watch, you know, through airports. I don't know why I'm thinking about smuggling diamonds, but, you know, all that excess space, is so wasted. There's nothing out of place. That's why I still give it a 3. But at the same time, it doesn't have the feeling the Universal Genève has. There's no real craftsmanship here. This is a mass-produced item. And you feel it. The crown is a little bent, this kind of thing. It feels cheap, you know, it feels cheap compared to the Universal Genève. Okay, let's move on to style. Now, this is just the aesthetics. This, I have no doubt that the Universal Genève wins. Now, yes, it is a very dated size. I mean, had this been 38 millimeters, even 36, this would be, you know, all the rage nowadays. Stylistically, though, the dial, the combination of the elements, and I've put it on this beautiful, I think this is a Hirsch strap. I can't quite remember. I don't think it is. It looks $1,000,000. I mean, it really does. It has the elegance and sophistication of a, I don't know, VC Patrimony or something like that. It looks like money. It's old money. It really is. In fact, I refer to it as old money. It's a very classic look. I think the proportions are perfect. The size of the hands, the markers, the little subtle double marker at the 12, the size of the crown in comparison to the case, the little step here, those beautiful angular lugs, the profile, the way the bezel slopes downwards, that flat crystal. It's mesmerizing to look at, it really is. It has an elegance about it that just exudes sophistication and style. It is very stylish, gorgeous. So definitely 9 out of 10. The movement, I think this is its weakest aspect. It really is a fashion victim of its day. I'm not a fan of that blue, although it makes the second hand more legible, and they've matched it with the logo, a little bit cheesy. The strap, as I said before, is way overpowering. The whole thing is too big. The proportions, the small crown doesn't work with this big case. The hands are too small, and to be honest, at certain angles you can't even see the hour and minute hands. The buckle is far too tool-tastic for a watch like this. It's something that's not going to age well, mainly due to its size. It's a design and a style that I think has been cooked up in like 5 minutes. I can't see that or believe that a ton of time has been spent considering the colors or the rest of it. The dial itself is highly reflective, and you kind of get lost in it. It is matte, but it doesn't really work. I do like the faceted minute and hour hand, but they're far too small for this watch. You could see right there where the hour hand is giving way for the date. It could have been a smidgen longer. That second hand is too short. It's almost looks like it doesn't belong in this watch. It's big and it's boring. It's clumsy and it's unrefined. Not very stylish at all. Let's move on. So 1 there, no surprise. Okay, next we have versatility. Now they both kind of draw here. Both of them are not that versatile. They still get this a 5 because at the end of the day, they're quite plain, simple designs, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun matching straps with them. Although, good luck trying to find a... actually, let's see, what size strap is this? Wow, 23.5. What a strange lug width. Yeah, good luck trying to find straps with that. Although it's simple design, the same with the Universal Genève, there is going to make it quite compatible with a lot of different straps. And actually, I got to say, it will look good with different straps, the same way this does. They don't score that highly because I don't think you can pair them with different bracelets or mesh or rubber or NATO straps for that matter. They're kind of limited to straps. But within straps, I feel their simple designs definitely will be compatible with more. While the movement watch is obviously far too exaggerated in size, the Universal Genève, I feel, arguably suffers from the opposite problem, being far too small for most people today. Yeah, 5s all around. Durability. Finally we have a score where the movement wins. Well, as you would imagine, it's a more contemporary watch with the quartz movement inside. It can take a bashing. The water resistance is 30 meters, definitely better than the Universal Genève. The Universal Genève basically doesn't have any water resistance, and especially being from the 60s, I'd be very hesitant taking it anywhere near water. Even wearing it in the rain, I'd be paranoid about. So, yeah, this is the first time the movement actually wins because, yeah, it's more durable. It gets a 6. Can take a beating, that's without a doubt. That's one of the main attractions or strengths of a quartz movement. The only reason why the Universal Genève still gets a 4 in comparison, it's so thin and small, it's going to be very difficult to catch or to be bashed on something. Let's go down to performance. And again, we have another genre or category where the movement wins. The movement being plus 20 seconds a month, it just can't be beat. Quartz cannot be beat. Also, it has 3-year battery life, which you can replace yourself quite easily with the snapback case. And performance-wise, the Universal Genève, it's not a good performer. It's not the most accurate watch. It gains almost a minute a day. Performance is not its forte. It's a watch really to look stylish in. It's not a tool. Whereas this actually, ironically, you could use it almost as a tool watch. It would make a good beta watch actually, but anyway. Okay, let's move down to X Factor. And yes, it's no surprise that the Universal Genève has it in bucket loads. Just look at this thing. I mean, it's a brand you can be proud of. You get the nod from enthusiasts, those in the know. It's not flashy at all, but yet has a little bit of pizzazz. It has a ton of personality in mid-century style. You know, I look at this and I think of, well, there's a reason why I call it old money. It has that old world sophistication. I could see Don Draper wearing this, despite it being very, very small. My wife absolutely adores it, and as you would expect, she does have very, very classy taste. Yeah, it's a lovable watch. For the price, incredible, and of course, as we've mentioned, this astounding history of Universal Genève. I also love the way, if we go right in close, if this thing will ever focus, I love the way it's signed very subtly. It's like, Universal Genève, Swiss. That's all it has to say, you know? Boom. Knocks it out the park. The movement only gets 2. This watch, I see it on every bearded flannel shirt wearing, you know, coffee shop hipster that I see around. It's an irritating watch. It's a clumsy design. There's nothing really lovable or enthralling about it. Even the way it wears, I mean, just look at that. It's overhangs on the smaller wrist. Yeah, there's no X factor here. I only give it 2 because somehow it has managed to capture the hearts and minds of the fashionista for some bizarre reason. I don't understand it. I feel it's boring. I feel there's nothing here that excites me at all. The only thing I like is the addition of bolt action spring bars. I think that's pretty neat, but you know, it's hardly their innovation. There's nothing here. You know. As a watch to serve a purpose, it does that absolutely fine. But for me, watches, they should invoke feelings of happiness or pleasure in some way. This is not enjoyable to wear like the Universal Genève. I just don't get anything from it. I mean, maybe you're different, but the only thing I can't help wondering is what you know, classic timepieces I could pick up for the same money. I think it still gets a 2 because at the end of the day, it's getting people to wear watches, which I guess is the only positive thing I can say about fashion watches. At least it's a watch, you know, especially in this day and age where everybody's super reliant on their phone. You get that Japanese quartz and reliability in the movement, which is respectable. At least. Yeah, only a 2. And I'm only giving it a 2 because, like I said, somehow it has made an impact. But then again, you know, it's a sad indictment of the world we live in today that this is so successful. But anyway, so it still gets a 2, I guess. So what are the scores? Drum roll. Let's have a look. 34 for the movement. Wow. That's hilarious. Okay. The lowest score ever in a watch duel, and 73 for the caliber 42 here. A decent mark. Not as, you know, not incredible, but you know, good all the same. Yeah, over double than the movement. You can see the kind of differences between, you know, something classic and vintage for roughly the same money, a little bit more than, you know, watches that are all the rage, an archetype of the fashion watch world, I guess. So yeah, it's been quite fun doing this. Let me know your thoughts, queries, comments, opinions, all the rest of it down below. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and found it useful. And as always, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Okay, ciao.